Welcome to the Nick Halaris Show. This is the place where we explore big ideas with people having a big impact on our world. I'm your host, Nick Halaris, serial entrepreneur, author, early morning riser, and seeker of truth and wisdom. Join me as we explore the journeys and discoveries of fascinating people who are literally unlocking the secrets to creating a life of both success and fulfillment. Each episode will arm you with insights, ideas, and practical perspectives on what it takes not only to be financially and personally successful, but also how to start having authentic impact on the world around you. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This week on the Nick Halaris Show, we are featuring popular keynote speaker and leadership consultant Anton Gunn. Through a long, diverse, and impressive career in both business and public service, Anton has become a leading voice for organizations and leaders looking to build world-class cultures. He has deep experience as a public servant, as a former state rep in South Carolina, and as a senior advisor to President Obama. Has written several best-selling books on leadership, The Presidential Principles and Just Lead, and inspires audiences almost every week of the year as a keynote speaker. I wanted to have Anton on the show to learn more about what he's seeing and learning from his work with leaders and organizations around the country. Clearly, there's something really important happening in the labor market right now. Not a week goes by where we don't hear about things like workplace toxicity, quiet quitting, or the declining labor force participation rate. We're even seeing things like big labor strikes and the beginnings of what looks like a rebirth in organized labor. Given what he does day in and day out, Anton is the perfect person to help us decode what's really going on here. In this engaging discussion, we explore things like the origins of toxic workplace culture, just why we've seen a huge uptick in people quitting across the country, what leaders should do if they want to build a world-class culture, what's working and not working with corporate DEI initiatives, the 3 questions of a great leader, the relationship between the commitment to service and great leadership, and much, much more. As always, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy. Our guest today is nationally recognized keynote speaker and leadership consultant Anton Gunn. Anton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick, for having me. I'm excited about being here.
Yeah, man, me too. I've really enjoyed kind of digging into your background and listening to your most recent public appearances. You've had an incredible life, an interesting life, and an impactful life, and an inspiring life. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I've been grateful to live and try to have an impact on this earth and make a difference for people. And I'm just grateful for the chance to do so. And I'm so happy to be with great people like you who allow me to do it more.
Thanks, man. Before we get into the questions, just a fun trivia fact. For some reason, I'm attracting former college football players to this show. So you are the third. We've had some players from the Ivy League. So like you played in a real, like not the Ivy League's not real, but you played in a real college football conference in South Carolina, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm a former SEC football player that played offensive line at the University of South Carolina. And so, yeah, I played at the highest level in the biggest conference, most dominant conference against some of the toughest competition on the planet. You know, sometimes people make jokes and say that, you know, the best SEC teams can probably beat some NFL teams. I don't know if that to be the case or the truth, but I can tell you some of the guys that I played against made me not want to play football anymore. They were that good.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, it seems that the SEC for many years now, you know, going back to when you played, has just done such a better job on recruiting, you know, even some of this sort of old traditional programs. Like I went to Michigan and they've out recruited Michigan, Notre Dame, you know, USC, all these big old schools.
Yeah. Yeah, I will tell you this. You know, I had a cousin who played at Michigan in the 90s. We would always go back and forth, SEC versus Big Ten. I got a good buddy of mine, Walter Bond, who played basketball at the University of Minnesota. We would argue about who's the best conference, is it Big Ten or is it SEC? And I would say unquestionable. If you look at the NFL draft in the last decade or more, you will see there were more players from the SEC that went on to professional football in the NFL than any other conference. But you can't take anything away from the Big Ten, particularly teams like Ohio State who show up and compete, Michigan as well. You know, the rest of the conference, you know, I call it the Big Two and the 10 dwarfs is what I call the Big Ten.
That's funny. Yeah.
But, you know, SEC does its job, man. And they, you know, it's big time football. Stadiums are huge, lots of fanfare. And we got warm weather, you know, basically 10 or 12 months out of the year in some places. And so who wants to play football in Michigan or Minnesota, after October when it's like freezing cold outside, when you can still be playing in 70-degree weather, all the way up until November sometimes. And so I think that's what gives the SEC the advantages, the geography, the programs, and then also the markets. I mean, the South is where people are moving to live. And so more and more population are in those states. And so if you want to be seen by more people and have a greater experience and a greater impact, there's nothing bigger and better than the SEC.
Yeah. Well, we might return to this later because in my research, you learned some good lessons about leadership in those days. And maybe when we get into that subject that you can share some of those. But I figured a good place to start this is kind of what you do day in, day out with your speaking and your consulting. You're focused on this idea of socially conscious leadership and helping organizations build, great cultures. And, if you read the news today, it's like, doesn't seem like any corporation in America has a good culture. There's so much like angst or animosity or whatever. So tell me what you're seeing day in, day out. What's going on in America?
Yeah, so this is actually the greatest place for us to start because it's one that is really universal and it's kind of affecting everybody. So I will tell you long and short, since 2021, 98 million people have left the job. I want you to think about that. 98 million people have left the job really in the last 2 years. There was at one time, we had 5 million people a month that were quitting jobs. They literally were walking away from jobs. Sometimes they had another job to go to. Other times they just didn't. They just walked out. And so this mass exodus of talent out of organizations is affecting business in multiple ways. I mean, we remember how restaurants were, at the later part of last year when literally, restaurants were closing early because they didn't have staff to be able to wait tables or to run shifts inside organizations. Some other companies, larger manufacturing companies, were literally having to go from a around the clock 3-shift framework of how they ran their companies down to 2 shifts because they couldn't keep and retain talent. And let's not even mention how the fact that in some industries that have never, ever heard of the words labor union in their life are now being organized. We saw Amazon employees decide to form a labor union in New York around the conditions that they were experiencing. I've even heard like bank tellers are looking at forming a labor union. Of course, we've heard about Starbucks and the team at Starbucks who've decided that they want to be in a collective bargaining union and how these things are affecting business. So that is the landscape that literally people are making a decision to leave. And if they don't leave, they're making more demands of what they want from their employer. And the question is, why is this happening? Well, the bottom line, through my research and my development, what I've understood of why this is happening is because employees are having an awakening about 2 things related to where they work. Number one, the people that they work with, the job that they're being asked to do, but most importantly, the leaders that they actually work for. That most people don't quit a job. They don't. But they quit a bad boss or bad supervisor or bad leader. They don't necessarily quit the work. They quit the people that they're working with because they experience toxic treatment in the workplace. Now, what does that toxic treatment look like? It could be anything from racism and sexism and sexual harassment. Like we've heard about all of these terms popping up, always hear about them, the lawsuits that get filed by employees. But sometimes it's not that structural or systemic. It might be something as simple as ostracization. And what do I mean by that? You get assigned to work on a project with 5 other people. But 4 of those people don't like you, Nick. They never liked you. They didn't like how you got your job. You didn't go to their school. It's something they don't like you. And so all of a sudden, they start to leave you off the emails for the project that you're supposed to be working on together. Now, 3 months go by and you've gotten a third of the emails that you should get. And so now the boss is asking, why is this project not on time? Those 4 people say, well, it's Nick's fault because he's not getting the work done. And you're like, I didn't even know the work was supposed to get done. Or you got people who decide, hey, we're going to go have a happy hour as a team, but they don't invite you. And so these kinds of things start to unravel into pieces of toxic workplace behavior where people really feel marginalized, they feel left out, they feel invisible, they don't feel included, and then they don't feel like their employer respects or values them. And so when they have this kind of framework, they make a decision to leave. And so what I've been spending the last 2 years, really, actually, let's go back 5 years. I've been talking about this for 5 years, but since the pandemic, most people see this as a critical and acute problem that they're having. But I can tell you now, this has been a problem that's been going on for a decade in particular industries like healthcare. So what I've been doing is I've been talking about the problem, but most importantly, helping leaders and organizations build diverse, high-performing teams in a world-class workplace culture that you can easily identify because it has two great characteristics. Number one, they have leaders that everybody admires, that these are people that we look up to and that we value and that we think, I want to be like that person in the workplace. And so if you can't name a supervisor in your company, if you can't name a leader that you look up to and you say, I want to be like him or her, then you got some work to do. The second characteristic is the organization where employees don't want to quit. They love where they work. They love who they work for because they feel valued. They feel respected. They feel included. They feel visible, and they're given every opportunity to succeed in the workplace. And so that's the challenge that we have before us, is how do we deal with this challenge? Because again, the successful businesses are the ones who figure out how to develop leaders and retain their top talent. The ones that are going by the wayside and getting eaten by their competition are the ones who don't figure those things out. And so I'm committed to help everybody to figure it out, working with them on a long-term basis or even a short-term basis, giving you the tools that actually work to retain your top talent.
There's a lot to unpack there. So first question, do you think, I agree with you. Like, I haven't had that much exposure to corporate life, but I have had a little bit. I did strategy consulting for a number of years, and this was like, before the great financial crisis, and it was pretty bad back then, so this is dated. But do you think something changed? Like, did things get like materially worse in the pandemic in terms of this phenomenon of sort of having cultures that don't have those two characteristics that you described, of having, people feel valued and having leaders that people admire? Or is it something else? Like, did it get worse, or are people responding to a different societal pressure or something and choosing to quit?
So I will tell you, Nick, this has been a problem since the Industrial Revolution. So I want you to go all the way back. You went to Michigan. So I'm going to talk about a Michigan company we know as Ford Motor Company. Like, the framework for the 8-hour workday and the 3 shifts at work was kind of started by Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company, that the 8-hour workday for the American employee is a relic of the Industrial Revolution. However, here has been the challenge, that since that time, we've continued to erode the framework between human beings and commodities to get work done in an organization. What do I mean by that? That 8-hour workday goes to a 10-hour workday. That 10-hour workday will go to a 12-hour workday. Like, if you think about healthcare, nurses work 12-hour shifts. Now, I don't know about you. What can you do successfully at the top of your game for 12 straight hours and not be severely exhausted at the end of that? Well, what we have done over the last 50 plus years is create a framework where employees are a solution to a problem. And what's the problem? I want more revenue. And so a solution is, how can I pump more employees in to do more work, to deliver more value, et cetera. Now, early on, we did say, in exchange for your work, we're going to compensate you fairly and equitably. That's what we said. But if we look over the last 50 years at not only the cost of living and how that changed and what employees' wages are over that same time frame, that we know wages and salary and benefits have not caught up, have not kept up with, the cost of living in this world. And then here's another example, and I'll close this one. This will give you the shift at why people have changed their mind about this whole construct. And that is, there was a time early on in the 20th century where the average CEO made 120 times the average employee. So if your average employee made $10,000 a year, then you as a CEO made 120 times that amount of money, which is $120,000 a year. Big difference, right? Well, today, as I'm talking to you, the average CEO makes 1,000 times the average employee. In some industries, it might even be 3,000 times the average employee. So when you see that disparity continue to grow and you put more and more pressure on people to do more and deliver more for the company, but not keep up the framework of what people think are fair and equitable, people have realized for many, many years that work was unfair. I mean, like there were movies being made back in the 70s and 80s called Take This Job and Shove It. I ain't working here no more. Like the term going postal. I want to buttonhole this one. The term going postal is when an employee showed up into a post office with a gun and started shooting the employees and the supervisors because of how they were being treated at work. That term going postal dates back to the 1970s. So this phenomenon today, the pandemic, really is nothing new. This is not anything new. The only difference is that employees have made a decision to say, you know what? I don't actually have to go and get another job. I can drive Uber. I can do DoorDash. I can start my own business. I can get wealth through the internet by selling stuff on Etsy or selling stuff on eBay. And don't let me be beautiful and creative and can use my LinkedIn account or to use my Instagram account. I can start generating revenue right at home, and I don't even have to go into work. It doesn't matter that I went to law school. It doesn't matter that I got an MBA. I can find a way to make it and not have to put up with that environment. So I think the biggest shift is the technological advancements have given so many people different options on how they can generate revenue that they actually don't have to put up with a bad work environment. And if they want a great work environment, they got their choice of them. Employers are now bending over backwards to get people to come to work. I talked to an employer just 2 days ago who said they're literally offering $50,000 signing bonuses, not for executive level positions, but like management positions, because they want the talent so bad. And so if you're an employee and you get a job that pays you $70,000 and they're offering you a $50,000 bonus if you stay 3 years, who's not going to take that deal? And so you got your choice of great work environments or great places to work. And now employers are starting to respond to that. But those that don't respond to it are losing their top talent and they won't ever get them back.
That's interesting. I'm glad you brought up this CEO pay thing, because when I was thinking about this conversation, that's where my head went. And I like the phrase that you used earlier, which is awakening. Because part of what I think is happening, I completely agree with you, is like people have woken up to a number of things. One, they've woken up to the reality that the people who make it to the top of these organizations are by and large, it's not true of everyone because there are good leaders out there, but they are trying to extract the maximum amount of benefits for themselves as possible in the short tenure that they have at the top of one of these organizations. And that's how you get this phenomenon where average CEO pay ratio is like wildly out of control. You know, it feels like a complete like kleptocracy type thing where the people at the top are just taking all the money.
Yeah, it's a few things. So, this is a great thing because I think I don't actually get to expand on this a lot, but you've given a great framework of it. There was a time where, corporations, you think about a corporate board. These are the governing leaders who help hire a CEO, evaluate the CEO. They also determine the compensation. So they literally took a stewardship framework of the company. So how do we attract the top talent in the CEO and keep that person on our team, deliver value for all of our customers, our suppliers, and everything down the supply chain, and we make a good return or profit for our shareholders? That was the construct. They looked at everything in total. But then there was an erosion and I don't know really where it started. I probably need to do more research on that. But there became this time where the share price became the number one and the only priority for a corporation, the share price. And so how they decided to compensate their CEO is if the share price went higher, we're going to give you more for getting the share price higher. So human nature would easily respond to that. So if I'm a human being and you tell me the incentive for me to get more money is to raise the share price, well, I'm going to do everything in my power to raise their share price, which is I'm going to ask employees to work longer and harder and do more. I'm going to cut my costs as much as I can. I'm going to, invest in new products and services, but not invest in my people. Why won't I invest in my people? Because people are the largest line item on your profit and loss statement. If you think about labor in an organization and benefits, that's your largest line item. So I want to reduce that line item and I want to invest in something that is more risky or that could give a bigger return on investment, but not be so infrastructure heavy. So when you have this focus on share price, what ends up happening is you get exactly what the output becomes what you put in. And so that's what CEOs responded to. And literally their compensation began to go through the roof as companies began to shift in the same direction. And then this is where you can see it full circle, is that now not only are employees recognizing this is wrong, but there are literally some shareholders who are saying, you know what, this ain't right. Yeah, I want the share price to go up high, but this is not just about the share price. This is about all of the stakeholders involved in our business. Number one, our employees, our customers. Number two, the communities that we're in. Number three, the supply chain, like who helps us to deliver these products and services. Everybody is important. Everybody matters as a part of the success. So I want to make sure that we're treating all of them fairly and equitably. And so what you saw happen just last year in the middle of the, downturn because of the pandemic, you saw Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, get offered a compensation bonus that was something crazy like $400 million as a bonus. Okay. And when that happened, what happened? The shareholders responded and said, oh, absolutely not. You're going to get a $400 million bonus. The board is going to recommend you get a $400 million bonus when we got people who are being laid off. We got an economy that is tight right now. Absolutely not. So the shareholders are being activists now and saying, listen, we got to pull back on this. We can't be doing stuff like this because that exacerbates the inequity. So you're starting to see this boomerang effect where shareholders are now saying, we want to make sure that we focus on stakeholder value rather than just shareholder value. And the smart companies, the companies who really get it, are also making the framework that this is about stakeholder value. Who has a stake in the success of our business? How do we make sure that they all are getting value? And that's when things are going to change. But until then, we're going to continue to see the problems that we see.
In your view, what percentage of the companies out there are oriented in the stakeholder mindset?
Yeah, so I would say that it's really small. I'm going to say top 10%. And we see those companies. I mean, we know who they are by name. They even might get a bad rap in some places, but generally speaking, these are the companies who are award winning for some other reasons. You can think about a company like Nike, who in the 1990s were accused of being like a sweatshop company and that they were exploiting people and had these factories that were polluting rivers and streams over in Taiwan and China. Well, all of that has been since turned around. Like Nike is now developing the first green shoe, like literally the entire shoe is green, and they give back to the community. They're investing in all of the markets that they're in. And, you just have to look no further than their investment in Colin Kaepernick and in the 30th anniversary of Just Do It, putting his face and his brand around social justice as the theme of their company. So they are recognizing that it's not just about shareholders, but it's about who buys our sneakers. It's about the communities that they live in. It's about, how we're reinvesting in the community. And I'm just using Nike as one example, but there are a lot of great companies who I feel like at the top are really focused in on delivering on that whole stakeholder value, not just the shareholders. But again, there's a long way to go, lots of room for improvement. You can look at certain industries and say clearly that they're not at all interested in trying to identify how they can have stakeholder value, and they just focus on shareholder value. But the percentage is small, so there's a lot more room to grow.
Yeah, it seems like, just thinking about it, there's a bunch of industries, unfortunately, where we've allowed sort of monopoly positions to be established. And banking is a good example of one, or tech. And those companies don't have any incentive to behave the way Nike's behaving because, like, what are you going to do? You can't really,
you can't really go anywhere if you want to leave JP Morgan. Like you go across the street, there's like 3 banks now that you can go to. So they don't have to respond to the market in the same way, which is kind of problematic.
Yeah, the banking industry is particularly interesting to me. Early in my career, I remember when there were community banks. I remember when, before you had a Wells Fargo, you had a Wachovia, you had a First Union that all ultimately became a Wells Fargo. And so you had all these different consolidations and that has grew the banking industry. But when you have smaller banks and you got to compete for customers, you're willing to do the things that it takes to keep your customers and keep the talent that you have. So there is some consolidation, but Wells Fargo and Bank of America still do compete. JP Morgan Chase, they still compete. So there is still a little competition in the industry, but the greatest levels of competition are, in like the automotive, advanced manufacturing. Those are the places where the competition is. And of course, small businesses. I mean, let's be clear. If you wanted to build a website, you got plenty of options of where you can go if you want to build a website. If you're trying to, decide where you're going to eat, there's a restaurant on almost every corner and they compete, but some of them are actually owned by the same corporation, but they're still different brands. And so I think competition in our commerce system needs to continue to improve and continue to create that competition. But the name of the game for some people is, how can I build a company and make it attractive for somebody wanting to acquire me? And that's a way that we've been able to help people to become, millionaires and capitalize, is that you create something new and it gets bought by somebody else. I mean, even going back to the example of Nike, that Nike was never really Nike in the beginning. It was a different company. And through a series of mergers and acquisitions, we get what we get in Nike. So there's always, changing landscape when it comes to business.
Hey guys, this is Nick. I wanted to take a quick break from the episode to share some exciting news. In addition to the podcast, I want to make you aware of some additional content we're putting out. And best of all, it's 100% free. Our Profit Plus newsletter consists of weekly insights about what it takes to find meaning in the pursuit of modern success. This is the place where we explore big ideas at the intersection of markets, business, politics, and life, as we seek to empower our readers to have an authentic impact on the world. If you're serious about finding fulfillment amid success, then definitely check out these additional insights. Just go to subscribe.nickhalaris.com. Again, that's subscribe.nickhalaris.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
Another industry, actually, which you have a ton of experience in your work for President Obama, that's completely messed up on this respect is healthcare, right? I mean, we could probably talk for the rest of this interview about the problems in healthcare, but that's got to be one of the worst workplace culture situations in the whole system, right?
You're 100% right. We're also seeing consolidation in healthcare too. I will tell you that there are hospital systems and physician practices that are being bought up by bigger systems. But from a standpoint, the reason why I got so passionate about this aspect of building a world-class culture and trying to eliminate toxic culture literally goes back to my 25-year career in healthcare. That it's one of the toughest places to work. I mean, like when I mean toughest places, nurses working 12-hour shifts, physicians feeling like they're commodities, people who clean hospital rooms getting treated like crap. I mean, these things have been going on for a very long time inside the American healthcare system. And there are some reports that will show you that even the suicide rate amongst physicians is 2.5 times higher than the general population. And that was pre-COVID numbers. I mean, that was real, that they were burnt out. You got nurses who the average, OR nurse or a nurse that works in a setting like the emergency room, would quit after 3 years because it's just high pressure, a lot of challenges. And then, the doctors sometimes are bad people themselves. I mean, I got stories upon stories of, nurses who told me that they were cursed out by a physician for a mistake that they didn't actually make. And then they have to turn around and put a smile on their face and walk into a patient room to try to be all cheerful, but they literally just got screamed at for something that they didn't do 30 seconds before. This kind of environment has been incredibly hard. And the pandemic put that on Front Street. And that's why we're all celebrating, we love our healthcare heroes, but those healthcare heroes appreciated that love and support in that moment. But listen, we've been getting treated like this for a long time. We just saw the acuteness of having to deal with patients and deal with more death, but how we've been treated in the workplace hasn't been the best at all. And guess what? Nobody in healthcare really cared. You know why? Because it's a high paying job. And the moment you quit, there are 5 people who want to replace you. And so, healthcare is kind of recession proof. It doesn't matter how great the economy is or how bad it is. People still are going to get sick. They're still going to need to go to the doctor. They're still going to get treatment. And whether, private insurance pays a bill, you pay a self-pay, or the government reimburses the hospital, somebody's going to pay the bill. And so it's kind of like in a recession-proof industry. And because of it, healthcare really didn't see the need to focus on taking care of the employees or taking care of their people, because they knew they were always going to get patients and somebody's going to want to see them and support them. And then you add in the last piece is that television has glamorized healthcare. I mean, you got shows like ER and Grey's Anatomy, and it makes people say, man, I want to be a doctor because I want to work in that kind of environment. And so we don't have a shortage of people applying to medical school. We don't have a shortage of people, applying to become physician assistants or going into the medical healthcare field in general. We do have some shortages in nurses, people who are leaving the profession, and it's a struggle to backfill them. But, healthcare is a great industry, and it's like almost a third of our gross domestic product, really about 20% of GDP. So it's a big business, big industry, and lots of challenges. That's why I'm passionate about helping to improve them and make them better places to take care of the patients in the most effective way possible, because we've taken care of the people.
Yeah. It's a crazy industry too, in my view, because it's all messed up on the back end because of the insurance stuff, which is, there's been some improvement in that, but it's still messed up. And you have this bad workplace, and then the customers, the patients have just grown accustomed to like having a crappy experience. And we're talking about literally, like you said, like it's one of the most important things in the economy. Like, can you access high quality health? And Americans have increasingly just accepted the fact that they're going to go to the ER and sit there for 10 hours, and they're not fighting against it. They're not pushing for change. They're just like, whatever, I'm going to get bad service. I'm going to be stuck on hold for 2 hours, whatever. It's kind of strange.
And that it costs too high. I mean, let's be clear, healthcare costs have come down some, but it's still too expensive for most of us. I mean, paying $40 for a copay or the co-insurance or a high deductible plan. I mean, all of these things are still very expensive. And so we have accepted it in some places, but I will tell you, there's some research out that shows that the American people are really bothered by the high cost of healthcare, and they want it to be different, but they just don't know how or who can provide that solution or what that solution could look like. So yeah, there is, and there's not a lot of transparency too. I mean, like we just don't know what happens, outside of the patient room that we're in. And we don't know how difficult it is in the supply chain. We don't know these things. So we don't really understand the cost structure. We know what it costs us, but we don't really understand what it costs. And what do I mean by that is the average employee that works at a company thinks that when they pay that $200 out of their paycheck for their healthcare premium, that they're paying $200 for healthcare. What they don't realize is that their employer is subsidizing that. So that employer is paying another $800 on their behalf. So they're spending $200 and thinking that that's how much healthcare costs me, when really, no, your employer is paying $800 on your behalf that you'll never see. And so there's not a lot of understanding and transparency about what's going on in healthcare, which is something else that I've always been passionate about helping people to fix. And that's why I worked for 3.5 years helping to implement the Affordable Care Act to try to lower costs and improve outcomes for people who were locked out and priced out and shut out from the healthcare system. And these are like entrepreneurs, small business owners, people who don't have a corporate job that provides them that, healthcare benefit that they get from work. One of the most rewarding things I've done in my life.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's strange. Like healthcare, I'm trying to think of another industry where there's literally no true price discovery, right? Like you said, nobody really knows what they pay. Maybe like their dental bill, like you might know what you pay for getting your teeth cleaned. Like that's the only thing in the entire system where you're presented with the price before you acquire the service. Like even, we had kids, and the bills for the kids, the delivery is out of control, but you don't actually, as a consumer, you don't pay near what the total bill is. And it's wild. It's a strange industry.
Yeah, it is. And we built it that way. Let's be clear. It didn't have to be like this, but this is the pathway we chose to go down a long time ago. So it literally, the American healthcare system goes back to World War II. World War II, we were trying to, fight the battle between good and evil. And because of that, the government really needed all companies to step up and help us with the war effort. So if you worked in a factory in Texas, and let's say you made steel turbines for, farming of some sort. Well, the government says, hey, listen, we want to do the two things. Number one, we need you to transition your plant to help us to make things to support our troops in war. And number two, we don't want anybody raising wages in America. So we're going to make all companies keep their wages flat. Right now, let's just keep it this way so we can get through the war. And when employers couldn't raise wages, they said, well, we got to offer these people something to get them to come work for us. And we can't offer them more wages. So they said, you know what? We'll pay for your health care. And so that's how the employer-based system got started, is that health insurance was always attached to a job. So if you had a job, you could get health care. If you got a better job, you could get better health care. But it wasn't a benefit or a right that we afforded to all citizens to say that, hey, because you're an American citizen, you deserve the rights and benefit of accessing healthcare. But other countries, post-World War II, like the UK and others, all went to a system that says, you know what, you're a citizen, you're entitled to the right to have healthcare, and it's something that we should pay for as a nation, not you should have to pay for it out of your pocket, and your job shouldn't have to pay for it. And so if we found a way to fix it, it would be better. But again, we didn't get here overnight, and it's going to take us just as long to undo it.
Yeah, there's too much profit tied up in the industry to and people fighting against it, powerful people. So, well, I want to switch gears now, because I feel like you have another very important, inspiring message to share, which is okay, what are the solutions to this toxicity in culture? What does good leadership look like? And I don't really know if I have a question, but maybe we start with what are you seeing, or what do you advise people who come to you? What do you tell your clients to change about what they're doing or implement?
There's a whole lot that I could share on this. I've written a book about it. It's called Just Lead, 44 Actions to Break Down Barriers, Boost Your Retention, and Build a World-Class Culture. And before we end, I'm going to give all of your listeners a free resource that will connect them to the book and give them some opportunity. But let me just break it down, that if anybody is listening to this podcast, you're watching this, I want to break this down for you, that everything rises and falls on leadership. If you want to end toxic workplace culture, you have to start with your leadership. Everything rises and falls on your leadership. That is from your corporate board of directors to the C-suite, all the way on down to anybody who is in a manager or a supervisory role. And we can also even include your frontline people who are leaders to your customers, that you might work at a register, or maybe you just bag groceries, but for that customer, that person is a leader. So let me break it down in this way. Every person, whether they're an employee or a customer, are asking the same three questions for the people who are leaders in the organization. The exact same three questions. Question number one is, do you care about me? Question number two is, will you help me to be successful? And question number three is, can I trust you? Now, what am I saying to you? Yes, every employee wants to know, do you care about me? Will you help me to be successful? And can I trust you? Every customer wants to know, do you care about me? Will you help me to be successful? And can I trust you? And let's be clear, your commercials, your ads, your mission statement, your vision statement, your website, they all say yes to these three questions. They all say yes, but nobody wants to hear yes. They want to see yes in your actions. So the reason why people quit a job, the reason why they leave you, the reason why they stop buying your product or services is because you're not answering yes to those three questions. And to make it more simpler and easier for everybody to understand, if you don't answer yes with your actions to the first two questions, you're never going to reach the third question. If you don't repeatedly, over and over again, show people that you care about them, that you're willing to help them to be successful, and that they can trust you, you're not going to build a world-class workplace culture. Now, I give you some strategies on how you can show people that you care about them, how you can help them to be successful, and how do you build trust. And that's what's in the book. But those 3 questions are the basics. Like literally, when you think about your team as a leader, anybody who looks to you for leadership, just pretend that they have on a t-shirt that has those 3 questions on it. Do you care about me? Will you help me? And can I trust you? And then you need to answer those 3 questions in your actions by showing them that you care, that you're willing to help them to be successful. And if you do that repeatedly, you start to build trust over time. And that answers the 3rd question.
Yeah. I love that framework. It seems like, going back to sort of our part of our earlier conversation, that first question is the one that's being so like not answered correctly or not answered at all. And it's sort of like the root cause, like some huge percentage of the employees of the world and customers nowadays, especially in this sort of post-COVID, feel like the answer to question number 1 based on your actions is that you don't care at all. And that is a problematic position to be if you're working for somebody or trying to, be a customer of a company.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you in this way, and I think we could probably sit on the care question because it really is important. Like today, we have the most data available to us that we could possibly have. Most people have some level of an online presence, whether they're social accounts or maybe they got a personal website or maybe they blog somewhere. They've been written about in a blog or a publication. We can get data and information on people from every way, shape, or form. We can get data on our customers. How many sources are tracking customers and customer buying habits and what customers like? So we know these pieces of information about people. But I believe that the biggest challenge for leaders in an organization, they have ignored all the available data sources to them and are not taking the time to get to know the people that they lead. When I mean get to know people that they lead, let me just make it simple. If you cannot name the spouse or the partner of the people who report to you, you're failing. If you don't know their kids' names, you're failing. If you don't know their kids' birthdays, you're failing. If you don't know where they graduated from high school, you're failing. If you don't know their favorite color, their favorite candy bar, their favorite movie of all time, or their favorite book, then you can't possibly show people that you care if you don't even know who they are. And so what I train leaders on and what my content is and my presentations and all my trainings and what I do with my clients is that I help them to find out who the people are inside of their organization. Because once I know who you are and I know what's important to you, then it gets easier for me to show me that I care about you. Because I know that your favorite food is Italian, and I know that you can't stand Mexican. So why would I have a potluck and bring in Mexican food when I know you don't even like it? See, those are the basics that I've seen. I can give you one quick example. I had a client, I met with some employees about their experience working there. And this woman told me that her teammates don't like her. And I was like, well, why don't they like you? Well, I don't know why they have a grudge against me, but they don't like me. And I begin to interview other team members and they literally say to me, well, we don't like her because she never shows up at any of our events. We have a lunch and learn every month and she never shows up. And I'm like, well, why doesn't she show up? I don't know. She just kind of standoffish and she doesn't like us, doesn't want to be a part of us. And I'm like, really? So I go back and talk to her. I say, well, can you tell me why you don't go to the lunch and learns? And she says to me, well, I don't go because they always order from the same barbecue joint and I'm Jewish and I don't eat pork. And so every time I go, there's never anything there for me to eat but some broccoli and some carrots. But everything else has got pork in it. This is an organization was in the South. And so I'm asking the leader, I says, well, who makes the decision on what the lunch and learn is going to be and where you're going to cater from? And he says, well, I do because I like barbecue. So this leader has made a decision to have a lunch and learn with his team. And because he likes barbecue, what he wants, he orders and assumes that everybody on the team likes the barbecue. And this one employee who says, well, I'm not going because I'm not going to sit there and starve every day and not eat at the barbecue. I'm going to go get lunch somewhere else with people who will give me some diversity in my palate. And then when I went back to those employees and they said, yeah, we're pretty tired of barbecue, but we know that the boss likes it. So we just want to kiss up to him and make him feel good that we like what he likes. And this is all what's wrong in the workplace. You got one employee who's now feeling ostracized and left out and feeling disrespected, and the team doesn't like her, all because her boss doesn't even know that she doesn't eat pork. Doesn't never ask the question, never bothered to inquire. That nobody ever bothered to inquire why she doesn't come to the barbecue. They just assume that she doesn't come because thinks she's better than everybody else. So that's the problem. Like, the cornerstone is, like, if you don't know the people that you lead, how could you possibly lead them? You can't lead people you don't know, at least not, but so far, because those people won't feel like that they're valued at all, that you're just leading them to get as much as you can out of them, not because you care about them and you care about their lives. And I teach leaders, one cornerstone of my keynote is I have this one phrase: your job as a leader is to not just help people to be good at the job, but to help them to be good at life. And to help someone to be good at life, you need to know what they want to be good at in life, what matters to them, what's important to them. And when you figure out what's important to them, you make it important to you. Those are the best leaders.
Yeah, that's so well said. Yeah, we live in this culture where we compartmentalize, we treat people as instruments without, addressing the reality that they're a total person with all of this sort of rich background. And our incentive structure, as we spoke about earlier, our incentive structure encourages us to do that because we're getting judged based upon sort of one tiny little metric in the thing, which is, did the number go up? And what's fascinating about it, I love the way you've laid this out, is this is like basic stuff. Like, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of times there's these like famous Navy SEAL type folks. And what's interesting is they have the same message, which is like, if you want to be a great SEAL team leader, you have to know your teammate. You have to care about them more than you care about yourself, essentially. And I think that there's a strong case to be made that that's true of sort of ordinary business leadership as well, which is, you want to have a great team, like, follow those principles and follow them to an extreme level and see what can happen.
Well, I will tell you, this is universal, man. Like, it's simple, but it's not easy, because if it was easy, everybody would continue to do it over and over again. It's not easy. It requires work and investment. And I will give you an example. If you think about college football, let's go all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is college football. The best teams in the country have the greatest recruiters. The greatest recruiters literally know the kids that they're recruiting inside out. They know their parents' names. They know their sibling names. They know all of their high school stats. They know their favorite hobbies and pastimes. They know everything. And they build a recruiting visit on the things that are important to you. So like if you wore number 10 in high school, okay, and that's your favorite number because Eli Manning was your favorite player, well, when you show up on a recruiting visit, they're going to put you in a jersey with your number on it. So you can see yourself in that jersey at their school and on their campus. They're going to, make sure that when you check into your hotel room, if you like chocolate snacks and candies, they're going to have Snickers bars and chocolate snacks. They're not going to have, fruity snacks like Twizzlers or Skittles in the room because you don't like those. Like, again, they know what's important to you. They know what you care about, and they do their best to create an experience to show you that we care about you. Now, here's where it gets broken sometimes. You got some programs who will only do that to get you on campus. And then once they get you on campus, they will flip the script and go back to doing their own business the way they want to do business. And that's why you see kids today hitting the transfer portal and going to somewhere else. But then there are other schools kids who come in and they don't ever transfer because they see that the coaches are living the values that they showed them in the recruiting process, that we really do care about you. We'll let you major in what you want to major in. We'll make sure that you graduate. We'll make sure that you wear the right jersey number. We'll make sure that you have the best experience possible. In exchange for that, we want you to perform the best as possible. And it becomes this positive, beneficial relationship. And so it ain't hard at all. It's a simple framework, but people somewhat just don't get it done. And I got friends who are Navy SEALs who taught me these same principles alongside. So they're universal, man. Think about this. If you got children, your children want to know, do you care about me? Will you help me to be successful? And can I trust you? So we should be doing this with every person inside of our lives. It's to show them that we care, that we're willing to help them, and that over time we can be trusted.
Yeah. Where did President Obama rank on that 3-question scale?
Without a doubt, he was always interested in delivering on those 3 questions for every person that he led. And particularly for those of us who got to know him in the early days before he was president, he delivered on all of that. Like, he knew what was important to me. He knew that I had a young daughter. As a matter of fact, I'll even tell you this. I don't get the chance to share this on a lot of podcasts. The very first time I spent 20 minutes in a car with Barack Obama, it was a 20-minute ride that kind of set the framework for the rest of my life. That whole 20 minutes, he never once asked me to do anything for him. And he never once wanted to know what I could do for him. We spent 20 minutes talking about our children, our daughters, because we both have daughters. We talked about our wives. We both married up, and we feel grateful that we married up. And then we both talked about our mother-in-laws, and that we have the greatest mother-in-laws on the planet Earth. And if we didn't have mother-in-laws that lived 10 minutes away from us, we probably would be divorced by now. And so that 20-minute conversation was really a discussion about who are the important people in my life. What's your mother-in-law's name? What's your wife's name? What's your daughter's name? How old is she? What does she like to do? How are you spending your time with her? That was the first 20 minutes of our conversation. And then in the last 5 minutes, it was, hey, I'm thinking about running for president. I need some good people. And I think you're a good person because I'm going to need somebody who's tough. And, you sound like you know what you're doing. But most importantly, you got a great family. Like, that kind of conversation is a thing that Barack Obama, I felt like, did more impressively than anybody else. That no matter where he was more interested in you than anything else. And so his goal was to help you to be successful. He was trying to help the American people be successful. And I will take that to the bank and to the grave. That was his framework and focus, that it was never about him. Like, selfless leadership is a principle. Like I talk about this in my books as well, is that service is a prerequisite of leadership, is that you have to be willing to serve people before you can lead them. And that's what President Obama wanted to do, is to serve. The second principle is empowerment, that if service is a prerequisite, empowerment is the essence of leadership. Empowerment means, are you giving people the tools, the information, and the resources to determine their own destiny? Not that you're trying to predetermine their destiny, but you're giving them the tools that they need to determine their own destiny. That's the second premise of leadership. And then the third premise is the one that Barack Obama lived above all else, is legacy. And what I mean legacy is that he was never trying to be successful as a president. He wasn't. Because success is what you can do by any metric. When you say that I've achieved the office and, the thing is still standing after I'm gone, that's the kind of success. But what is significance? Significance is meaning that you have left that place better than you found it. And I will tell you this. There's a great quote from Miles Monroe about this, and it says, success without a successor is a failure. And that if you don't use your time, your talent, and your opportunity to leave something better than you found it, you might be successful, but you will never be significant. And how I know Barack Obama was significant was because over and over again, he built the level of trust and a commitment to know that he was going to be a good steward as best as he could for the nation. And how he literally set his legacy is that today there are 27 million people who have health insurance coverage who didn't have it before. And he even told me one time that that's not even really significance to him. Significance to him is that people who are born long after he's gone will still have that same benefit and opportunity. And that's why, he ranks very high as one of my favorite human beings on the planet Earth. And the reason why he's one of the most admired men on planet Earth. And that's, slight to anybody else. There are a lot of great people. But if you just search the most admired people on this planet, his name is going to be on that list. And I'm pretty certain it's going to be in the top 10.
I've never met him, but, observing from afar, he held that office with a certain kind of dignity. And I'm not surprised that you answered the question that way. That seems authentic to the way he engages what you described.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. This episode of the Nick Halaris Show is brought to you by Metros Capital. If you're an investor looking for direct access to real estate investments, then we'd love to talk with you. Investment opportunities at Metros Capital balance financial returns and community impact. To learn more, contact us at metros.nickhalaris.com. Again, that's metros.nickhalaris.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
I picked up when I was doing research for this talk that you have this sort of ingrained passion for service. And we talk about that a lot on the show. Many of our guests come to a similar mindset or are born into a family with a mindset. And I learned that you have like a very interesting family history where going several generations back, right? People serving in the United States military at a time when maybe the military didn't even want them there, which is kind of fascinating. So tell me about this passion for service and where it came from and what it means to you.
Great question. And one that I'm proud to talk about, honored to really talk about. And that is, I'm a fourth generation military brat. Okay. So when I say brat, for those who don't know anything about the military, a brat is the kid of somebody who serves. And I'm in the fourth generation. The first generation is my great grandfather who served in both world wars. Now, some people's like, wow, man, how did he serve in both world wars? Well, he happened to be born in the wrong year, in the wrong day, in the wrong month of the wrong year. He was born in 1897. And when World War I started, he was 20 years old. And so as a young, strapping 20-year-old, he was drafted into World War I. This is a black man in West Virginia drafted into World War I. And World War I was short. Most people don't realize that it was short. It was only 9 months long, and that sounds kind of long, but when you compare it to Vietnam and the 20 years we were in Iraq, it's very short. So 9 months, the war was over. He went back and worked in a coal mine in West Virginia. He was a laborer in a coal mine. And then at the age of 45, he was drafted into World War II. And people are like, I thought the draft cutoff was at age 45. It was. If your birthday was after February 16th, but his birthday was February 15th. So by one day, he was eligible to be drafted into World War II, and his number got called. And so literally, that's how he served in both world wars. And at the same time, he was in World War II. His oldest son, my grandfather, Louis Gunn, volunteered to join the Army during World War II. And my grandfather was in the Army's Special Services. Now, Nick, I wish I could tell you a great story about how the Army Special Services was an elite fighting unit, and they were moving through the jungles of Eastern Europe, taking out Nazis and freeing the Jewish people from concentration camps. I wish I could tell you that kind of story. I can't, because the Army Special Services was not an elite fighting unit, but it was the Army's baseball team. My granddad played baseball during World War II in the Army, and they traveled around and played goodwill baseball games to keep the morale of soldiers, sailors, and Marines up, because baseball was America's number one pastime. I know we love football today, and it's our biggest sport, but baseball was it in America during World War II. And so if you played baseball, you were larger than life. And if you put on a uniform, a military uniform, and played baseball, it almost made you superhero-like. And so my grandfather played baseball, and the Army Special Services was one of the first racially integrated units in the United States military, because it was like the entertainment division of the military. So you had like Bob Hope and Sammy Davis Jr., who would do comedy shows for soldiers and sailors overseas. Well, the baseball team was a part of that. So that's my grandfather. But my grandfather married an amazing woman who gave him 4 children, 4 boys. And my grandmother also did her part, because she was a welder in a shipyard in Norfolk, Virginia. And she helped to build 3 carriers during World War II, the Shangri-La, the Tarawa, and the Lake Champlain. And she raised us, letting us know that she did her part, and women did their part as a part of the war effort. But those 4 boys all put on military uniforms and served our country. So my Uncle Clarence was a Marine during the Korean War. My Uncle LG, Vietnam veteran in the Army. My dad was in the United States Navy for 22 years, 1970 to 1992. And then my baby brother, my Uncle Lucky, he joined the Army, but we call him Lucky. That's his nickname. It's not his real name. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until I was about 15 that I knew what his real name was. But they call him Lucky because one of the reasons why he was lucky, because he was actually in basic training in the Army when the Vietnam War ended. So he didn't see combat. So he was lucky that he didn't go to combat like everybody else in the family. So those are 3 generations, and I'm in the 4th generation. And my brother Sharon joined the United States Navy in January of 2000. And unfortunately, 10 months later, he was killed in a terrorist attack aboard the USS Cole on October 12, 2000. As a matter of fact, this week, I was in the New York Times talking about our family's continued fight for justice, knowing that one of the gentlemen who helped plan the attack on the USS Cole is still in prison in Guantanamo Bay and has been in prison for over 10 years, but he's not convicted yet. He hasn't been to trial. So he's actually kind of in jail and not necessarily prison for the crime, but he's being held. And so we're still waiting on justice for my brother and his 16 shipmates who gave their lives for this nation on October 12, 2000. And so that story of my family of service and sacrifice underscores who I am, that my job is to serve the same way my grandfather and great-grandfather and father and uncles and my brother all put on a uniform. I never put on a military uniform. I told you I went to college to play football because my dad encouraged me to go play football. But it doesn't mean just because I don't wear the uniform, don't mean I can't serve, don't mean I can't make a difference, doesn't mean I can't bring honor to my family's history and legacy and make a difference. And so I made a decision to go into public service. And I'm a former state legislator. I served in the South Carolina House and, of course, worked for a president of the United States. And so I took an oath to serve our country, the best of my ability to do my job for our nation. And I did. And I'm honored to have that opportunity to continue the legacy of my family and excited about hopefully my daughter continuing on that same legacy as she heads off to college this fall.
Yeah, it's an incredible legacy. And I can tell just from talking to you, several times and following your work that this ethos of service like infuses everything you're doing in the work you're doing as a consultant, in the books that you're writing and keynote speaking that you're doing. And it's inspiring. And I feel like it's something that people can learn from.
Everybody can learn something. And as a matter of fact, I want to offer your listeners and viewers something that I think would be of value to them. I want to give them a free toolkit to help them to improve their leadership. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and I'm going to give you the link of where you can get it. And hopefully you can put this in the show notes. I want people to have the 10 qualities of a world-class leader. Like if you want to be that leader that is admired, what are the qualities that the greatest leaders have in common? Let's just name a few of them. People like Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa. I mean, we know on and on and on the leaders that are admired the world over. Even Oprah, to the degree, fits this framework. I've kind of distilled down into 10 qualities, if you will, that all of these leaders have in common. So I want to give that to you. I'm also going to give you my Just Lead Toolkit, which are the 9 pivotal points that I share in all of my keynote presentations. These are the takeaways that really matter. It's where I put those 3 questions, as a matter of fact, in the same presentation. So if you go to antongunn.com/toolkit, you give me an email address, I will send you that toolkit. And if you're interested in more learning and development on how you can just lead, how you can break down barriers, boost your retention, it'll give you the opportunity to get access to my leadership lessons. These are the Just Lead application series lessons where I literally teach leadership every single week to help you to be better, not only as a person, but be better for the people that you lead and be better in your life. And so there you go, antongunn.com/toolkit. It's a resource for everybody, and I hope people take advantage of it.
Yeah, thank you for that offer, and we'll absolutely make sure that that's included in the show notes and the distribution that we send to all of our readers and listeners. Thank you for that. We're coming near the end. I just have one more question for you, and it's kind of a big one, so we don't have to dive all into it, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to get your perspective because of what you're doing day in and day out. So another big hot button issue that I sort of forgot to mention earlier in corporate America is this whole idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've had several guests on the show already talking about this, approaching it from a different angle, from sort of civic activism and nonprofits. But there's just so much noise about corporation, what's happening in corporations. Are they abandoning DEI? Is DEI dead? Like, what's working in your opinion? That's my question. If there's anything working in that, what is it?
Great question. So this is all becoming more of a hot topic of conversation because of the recent Supreme Court decision about higher education, changing the way colleges and universities are able to recruit diverse talent and offer diverse opportunities for students to come to certain institutions. And so now the question is, how is this going to affect corporate America? Well, I'm a former chief diversity officer. I was a chief diversity officer at an academic hospital system for about 6 years. And I can tell you that there was a time when you had organizations who were antithetical to any kind of diversity agenda and didn't want a DEI officer at all. But then there was this awakening that says, you know what? We really recognize the benefits and the value of a diverse workforce and a diverse leadership team. The data is like proven. And when I mean proven, the companies who have women on their executive team and in their C-suite and on their boards have a 15% higher profitability than all of their competitors in their industry. That the more diverse you are, the more money you will make over your competitors. And when you add in race and ethnicity to that data set, so add race to your C-suite or ethnicity to your C-suite and on your board, that profitability goes up to 33%. That you make a third more money than all of your competition inside your industry. And so businesses recognize that. And that's why diversity has become more important to them. I will say that some other companies recognize that our customers are growing more diverse. They're generationally diverse. They are geographically diverse. And so our context is that we want people who represent our customers. I mean, there's a reason why Apple stores are always full no matter where you go, right? It's because they got the best product, but the workforce inside an Apple store actually looks like all of the customers who are at the Apple store. And they stay busy because they do their best to reflect the diversity of their customers. They know that diversity is good for business. So companies like Apple are not running away from the DEI conversation. They're not. But some companies are going to run away because they never wanted to do it in the first place. They were only doing it to be a part of the cool kids club, to be a part of saying, hey, we're doing this, so you should like us the same way you like them. But here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen to those companies that walk away from diversity, who downsize their chief diversity officers or make it uncomfortable for their diversity staff to be able to do their jobs? Those companies are going to lose market share. And over time, they're going to get acquired by the companies who still value diversity. And so it's a strategic business imperative. This is not a feel-good program. This is not just about, saying you're going to do the right thing, but this is what the right thing yields. And that is the greatest outcomes, because I'll go back to a sports analogy, and I'll leave it at this. You could be a football fan on all accounts. Let's pick a team. Let's pick the heyday of the New England Patriots. Let's just pick those teams when they had Tom Brady and the great coaching staff and the great defense and all those other things, right? Well, here's what I want you to know. You can consider Tom Brady to be the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. But if you put 11 Tom Bradys on the field at the same time, they're going to get their butts kicked by my daughter's middle school team. Because guess what? Tom Brady is good at his position. But in order for them to build a successful championship team, they had to have massive amounts of diversity in their starting lineup. That the left tackle is different than the right tackle. The center is different than the middle linebacker. The cornerbacks are different. That they all have a unique skill set that have to be brought to bear to maximize them so they could win and achieve a championship. And so if you lack diversity, if you only are hiring Tom Brady's in your company, there's only one quarterback on the field at a time. So you're going to be wasting 11 other people's talent. But if you put those 11 other people in leadership positions, they're going to fail because Tom Brady can't run the ball. Tom Brady can't catch passes. Tom Brady sure can't cover wide receivers. And so if you really want to understand the value of diversity and the value of inclusion, of making sure you bring those voices to the table, your best ideas will never come from you sitting in a room by yourself. They just don't. So you put people around you and you'll find success. And so what's working are the companies who have hired Anton Gunn to help them to build the diversity strategy. And secondly, the ones that believe that diversity is a strategic business advantage for us. And that's the reason why we're not going to run from it. And yes, you're probably going to get sued because there are some people who are filing these frivolous and angry lawsuits to say, hey, if you have a hiring diversity program that you're trying to hire more women or hire more African Americans or hire whoever, that we're going to sue you because you're discriminating against other people. You're going to face those lawsuits. And if you got a general counsel who runs the day and runs your business, they're going to mitigate risk and tell you, well, let's get rid of everything diversity because that's going to lower our risk. But we all know no risk, no reward. And the businesses who say, you know what, we're going to keep doing what has been valuable for us, would have returned the greatest level of financial investment, return on investment for us, is supporting diversity in our workforce, diversity in our teams, diversity at every level in our company or organization. And no matter what your company looks like, you can always do more. I know you can always do more. And those that have that right commitment and right mindset, those are the ones that are going to win. That's how I see it.
Yeah, man, well said. And I like the point you made about the customers, because that's the truth. Like, America is a very diverse place, and the customer base is very diverse. And you need to, as a leader, you need to be able to have that perspective of all of that, and just having one voice at the table, you're never going to get it. Fascinating. Well, Anton, this was super fun. Thank you so much for all your time. Love to do it again sometime and check in on what you're seeing across the world as you do your work. And just thanks for being here. And I'll make sure everyone gets the notes we discussed earlier.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for creating this platform and creating opportunities for people like me to be able to share.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Nick Halaris Show. We hope you enjoyed the episode and would appreciate your help with spreading the word by sharing with your network on social. And until next time, remember, it's not about pursuing success to unlock fulfillment. It's about learning how to find fulfillment in the midst of success.